The forest floor was covered in hair. At first, I thought it was pine needles. From the edge of the clearing, it had that same soft, matte look, dark, uneven, scattered between roots and stones. The late light filtered through the canopy in dull green sheets, flattening everything, erasing depth. It made the ground look harmless, familiar, but pine needles don't lie in strands that long. Eli stepped forward before I could stop him. His boot pressed down and the surface gave with a muffled, compressing sound, dense, fibrous, wrong. He lifted his foot quickly, like he'd stepped into something warm. "Don't," he said, too late. The layer shifted where he'd disturbed it. Not scattered, not bent. It settled, sliding in slow cohesion, strands clinging together, then separating again. The movement was subtle but coordinated, like something adjusting itself. Mara came up beside me. "Is that fur?" No one answered. I crouched, the air growing colder as I got closer to the ground. A damp chill pressed against my fingers before I even touched it. When I did, the sensation ran deeper than I expected. Soft, yes, but oily. Not wet like water. Coated. The strands slipped across my skin, fine and long, some curling around my fingers, others threading between them. They resisted when I tried to lift them, as though anchored beneath the visible layer. I pulled my hand back. The smell followed. Not rot, not decay. Something closer to skin trapped too long in heat. Sour, faintly metallic, with a sweetness underneath that made my throat tighten. "Okay," Eli said, steady but thin. "We didn't see this from the trail. We just go back." Mara nodded immediately. "Yeah, right now." We turned. The trail wasn't there. It should have been 10 steps behind us. A narrow break between two trees, marked by a fallen branch. I remembered stepping over it. Remembered Eli catching his boot on it. But there was nothing now. Only more trees, evenly spaced, their trunks repeating in a way that made distance hard to judge. Eli moved past me, scanning. "No, hold on." He circled once, slower the second time. The hair extended beyond the clearing. It thinned near the edges, broken by patches of exposed dirt. But it didn't stop. It stretched between the trees in every direction, a continuous layer that faded but never disappeared. "We walked over this?" Mara asked. "I don't think so," I said. The forest was too quiet. No wind, no insects. Even our movements seemed muffled, absorbed before they could echo. Eli stepped toward the tree line and nudged the ground with his boot, pushing aside a small section of the hair. Dark soil showed beneath. "See? It's just." The strands slid back, covering the patch again. Not falling, not drifting, sliding, as if drawn. He froze. A sound rose from below. Soft at first, like threads brushing together. The hair trembled underfoot, faint ripples spreading outward from where we stood. They crossed and overlapped, intersecting in shallow waves. I stepped back. The ground behind me was thicker now. The strands had gathered, rising slightly, brushing the backs of my ankles. "That wasn't there," I said. No one disagreed. The air grew colder. I could see my breath in thin, uneven bursts. The smell deepened, that cloying warmth beneath the sourness pushing harder into my lungs. Eli turned slowly. "We pick a direction. Keep moving." "Which one?" Mara asked. The trees looked the same in every direction. Same spacing, same height, same pale bands of light cutting through the canopy. "Left," he said. We moved. The hair resisted each step. It clung, tangling around our boots, dragging as we lifted our feet. It felt like walking through something that didn't want to release us. The whispering followed. "No, Rose." Each step stirred it. The sound intensified beneath us, then faded as we moved on, replaced by the next patch. It formed a shifting field of sound, never quite still. Mara stumbled, grabbing my arm. "It's moving under it." I looked down. The strands parted for a second, not enough to see clearly, but enough to reveal motion beneath. Something smooth, sliding just out of focus before the hair closed again. "Keep going," Eli said. We did. Nothing changed. The forest didn't open or close. The light didn't shift. It stayed in that suspended, green dimness, as if time had stalled under the canopy. The hair grew longer. It brushed our calves now, loose cords forming where strands twisted together. They dragged against us, tightening briefly with each step before loosening again. The whispering changed. It found a rhythm, rising and falling in patterns that mimicked speech without forming words. It pulsed, overlapping, building into something that pressed against the edges of understanding. Mara's breathing turned uneven. "Do you hear that?" "Yes," Eli said. "Don't listen to it," I added, though I couldn't stop myself. Beneath it, something deeper emerged. A slow, drawn-out exhale. It came at long intervals, stretching through the forest, vibrating faintly through the ground. Each time it sounded, the hair stilled for a fraction of a second, then resumed its motion. "Something's down there," Mara whispered. The ground ahead lifted. A low swell moved beneath the surface, pushing the hair upward in a smooth, elongated shape. It passed from left to right, displacing the strands without breaking them. We stood frozen as it moved past. Then another followed, closer. Eli stepped back. The hair around his ankles tightened. At first, it only gathered, strands drawing together, winding loosely. Then it constricted. He jerked his leg. "Hey!" Climbed. "Help!" he said, sharper now. I grabbed his arm, pulling. Mara did the same. The strands stretched as we pulled him back, thinning but not breaking, snapping tight again when we lost tension. "Cut it!" he shouted. I pulled the knife from my pocket, hands shaking. The blade met resistance. The strands parted slowly, dragging against the edge like elastic fibers. Severed ends writhed briefly before slipping back into the mass. "Again!" he yelled. I cut deeper. Mara pulled harder. The hair surged. It rose past his knees in a sudden tightening motion, coiling and layering, forming a dense, moving sheath around his legs. The deeper sound, the breathing, grew louder, closer. The ground beneath him bulged. Eli screamed. The hair opened. Not split, opened. The strands parted and folded inward, revealing only darkness beneath before closing again around him. It flowed upward, engulfing his waist, his chest. We lost our grip. He fell forward, hands slamming into the surface. His fingers sank in up to the knuckles, disappearing between the strands. "Don't let it," he choked. We grabbed him again, but the resistance was absolute now. The mass held him solid beneath the shifting layer. The hair reached his throat. His face twisted. Not just fear, but confusion, like he couldn't map what was happening to him. The strands pressed over his mouth. The whispering aligned. For a single, unbearable moment, every thread seemed to move in the same rhythm, the same pattern. A unified cadence, speech without language, focused entirely on him. Then it closed. He vanished into it, not pulled under, not dragged away. The surface simply accepted him, smoothing over where he'd been until nothing remained but the uniform layer of hair. Mara and I stumbled back, falling, tearing ourselves free as the strands clung and reached. We ran. The forest warped. Trees blurred together, spacing shifting just enough to disorient. The light dimmed further, though no sky showed through the canopy. The whispering followed, rising and falling with our steps. At some point, the hair thinned. Then it stopped. We collapsed onto bare ground, gasping, the silence crashing in. No whispering, no breathing, just the hollow stillness of a normal forest. We found the trail hours later, or it found us. When we told them, the words sounded wrong, flattened, unreal. They went back. They said the clearing was covered in pine needles. Thick but ordinary. No sign of Eli. No disturbance. Nothing. Mara doesn't talk about it. I try not to, but sometimes in quiet places, I hear it again, that layered whisper, just beneath the edge of sound. And last night, I woke with my hand clenched. There was a strand across my palm. Long dark, pulled tight between my fingers, as if something below was testing the distance. Their lantern flickered in response to something breathing nearby. At first, I thought it was just Evan fidgeting with the lantern. The soft pulse of light danced across the circle of our campsite, illuminating Myra's tense face, the coals that had long since cooled, and the forest that pressed in around us like damp velvet. The night was unnaturally still. Not a leaf shivered, not a branch cracked. Even the usual insect hum had been absorbed somewhere beyond reach. Then the exhale came. It wasn't human. Not quite. Warm, wet, sour. Like soil and decayed leaves exhaled through lips that weren't there. The lantern dipped sharply in response, as though pulled by the invisible breath itself. Mira shivered and leaned in toward Evan. He shook his head, lips pressed tight. "It's the wind," he muttered, though nothing stirred. I could feel it brushing against my neck now. Closer, watching. Another inhale, a slow, deliberate draw of air, pressing against our faces, tugging at our clothes. The lantern dimmed again, then flared. Its flame pulsed with every breath, synchronized like a heart tethered to some unseen organism. Mira whispered, "Do you feel that?" "Yes," I said, though the word felt wrong. Too loud in the unnatural quiet. The breaths multiplied, circling us, overlapping, slightly out of sync with each other, and with us. 1, 2, 3, then more. Shapes of sound we couldn't locate exactly, moving through the trees without disturbing them. I wanted to run, but my body felt leaden, as though the forest had absorbed our weight and refused to let go. We tried to retreat to the tent. Each step forward was met with resistance, the clearing stretching subtly, imperceptibly, but enough to make us doubt the distance we'd already crossed. The tent stayed stubbornly far away, a pale smudge of fabric in the dark, growing no closer no matter how fast we moved. The lantern flared violently. Every breath coincided perfectly now, hot air brushing our cheeks, the faint scent of bark and rot clinging to us. Then a voice broke through the cadence. Not from any direction I could pinpoint, but woven into the pattern of exhalations. "Stay close." Evan froze. The voice was his or a distorted imitation of him. "Stay close," repeated, warped, yet chillingly familiar. Then Mira gasped. "They're copying us." I could feel them learning, breathing, mirroring, layering themselves over our movements. Each inhale drew the lantern light inward. Each exhale made it flare. The forest itself had begun to bend. Trees leaned slightly, trunks warped. Spaces folded inward and stretched out without warning. The clearing was no longer circular, the tent impossibly distant, then momentarily close, then back again. Panic set in. We ran or tried to, legs sinking, resistance pulling us backward, the breaths racing with our own. I felt something brush my arm, not solid, but tangible in its pressure, displacing the air around it. The lantern went out. Darkness swallowed us. For a heartbeat, nothing existed. No light, no sound, only the sensation of being compressed by the forest and the breaths, now everywhere at once. Then the lantern reignited, high above, hanging from a branch that hadn't existed before. Evan's hands were empty. The light cast downward, illuminating us in a tight circle. The darkness beyond throbbed with presence, shifting, compressing, learning. The breathing had stopped. Then I felt it in the shape of the air above me. Not a body, not a shadow, but a volume that displaced space, folding the light around it. It was enormous, yet absent, a living hollow defined by what it wasn't. "Stay close," whispered Evan's voice again, perfectly timed. The shape lowered slightly. Warm air pressed over our faces. I realized with a sinking certainty that it had learned the rhythm of our bodies, the pattern of our voices, the angles of our movements. It matched us now. Evan's outline elongated, blending into the distorted space, and my stomach dropped. Something else had taken the rest. Myra's figure shivered beside me, a ripple in the air where she once stood fully. I dared a glance at her. She looked human, but the space around her was thinner, wrong, compressed into the air in ways that made me recoil. The lantern swayed gently above, perfectly steady now, its glow unflinching. And in that light, I could see the forest had learned to breathe with us. The clearing was no longer a space. It was a cage shaped by imitation, an organism built from absence, responding to the rhythm of our fear. We didn't scream. We didn't run again. We couldn't. I stood frozen, aware of the breaths brushing my neck, the soft distortions of the trees leaning in, the alien rhythm now perfectly aligned with our own. The last thing I saw, just before the air seemed to pull me forward into its learned geometry, was Evan's face. Unchanged, yet not entirely him, watching, waiting, and perfectly calm. And the lantern pulsed once more, in time with our own breaths, as though nothing could ever be alone again.